In Chapter 3, we're going to start solving equations. Now, solving equations is an essential part of algebra. When you solve an equation, one thing I think you should write down, or I highly suggest you write down, is this. The goal for any equation that you solve is to get the variable by itself. You must get the variable by itself. Get the variable by itself. That way you can find the value of the variable. Now the problems you're doing in this video are going to be easy enough where you could probably do them with no work. But you need to know the steps. So the steps that I'm going to go through, you must solve your equations by using these steps. Now, you've heard about equivalent fractions before. What's an equivalent fraction? Or what are fractions that are equivalent? They're fractions that are equal. So the same thing is true with equations. Two equations are equivalent if they have the same solutions. The addition and subtraction properties of equality can be used to rewrite or to write equivalent equations. So let's go over the addition property and subtraction property of equality. And by the way, you can ask any 8th grader that I have. Right now, they're actually using the addition property and subtraction property of equality. In every proof and every single assignment they do, they have to write down this reason. So these are going to come back in 8th grade in which you have to prove things. Here they are. Here's your key ideas. The addition property of equality says this. Adding the same number to each side of an equation produces an equivalent equation. For example, if you had an equation that says A equals B, you could take a number and add it to the left side, but you then have to add it to the right. So for example, if I had x plus 2, let's make it actually even easier. X equals 7. I can add anything I want to each side of this equation. I could add 1 to the right, or left. But that means if I add 1 to the left, then you also have to add 1 to the right. And that would give you x plus 1 equals 7 plus 1, which is 8. So this equation right here and this equation right here are the exact same equation. That's what you would call equivalent equations. Now the same thing is true with subtraction property of equality. So a subtraction property of equality says that subtracting the same number to each side of an equation produces an equivalent equation. So if you had A equals B again, but now you subtracted the same number on both sides, your equation would be equivalent to the original one. All right, so let the fun begin. We are going to now solve equations. I love this. I love solving equations. When you solve an equation, you are going to hear me say a lot. Do inverse operations. Inverse operations. So you have to do the opposite. The opposite of addition is subtraction. The opposite of subtraction is addition. So now, if you do inverse operations, your goal is going to be getting the variable by itself. So in this problem, oh, there's my lightsaber. Phew. All right, so x minus 5 equals 2. You're looking at that going, Mr. Humphreys, well, I know 7 minus 5 is 2, so my answer is 7. And you're absolutely right. But you have to show me the steps because you're going to get problems eventually that are going to look like this. And you're going to look at that and say, well, I can't do that in my head. You're right. So that's why the steps that you learn are oh so important. So the first thing we do is we have to get the variable by itself. My goal is to write an equivalent equation where this equation here and this equation here would be the same. So what we have to do is we have to undo the minus 5. If I undo the subtraction, we use inverse operations. The opposite of minus 5 is plus 5. But if I add 5 to the left side, I have to add 5 to the right. So now if I simplify, the negative 5 plus 5, that cancels. So what I'm left with is x equals 7. I simplify it. Now take your 7 and plug it back in. Does 7 minus 5 equal 2? It does. Another hint I'm going to tell you is always try to keep your equal signs to your equations lined up. It will help you in the long run. Now, let's get rid of the minus 5. I want to get the variable x by itself. So the opposite of minus 5 would be what? We have to add 5 to both sides. X equals, and the negative 1 plus 5 is 4. Now notice what I did here. This plus 5 on both sides, and the same thing here. That's the addition property of equality. If you add a number to the same side, add the same number to both sides, you're using the addition property of equality. So now, let's do another example, because these examples are fun. Z plus 3/2 equals 1/2. So now I have to undo the plus 3/2. What's the inverse operation of adding? It's subtracting. Whenever you move something across the equal sign, and maybe this makes sense now, it might not, and that's okay. When you move something across that equal sign, it flips. This negative 5 changes to a positive 5 and is added to 2. This negative 5 is moved to the other side and we add 5. Here, the plus 3/2 is going to move to the other side, and it's going to become minus 3/2. So I'm going to get z equals 1/2 minus 3/2 is negative 2 over 2, which is just negative 1. So let's do this. 10.4 equals w plus 13 2/10. Now notice in this problem, the variable is on the right side. Because the variable is on the right side, you have to move everything to the left. So I'm going to get rid of the plus 3.2 by using the subtraction property of equality. So I subtract 13.2 on both sides. That leaves me with w equals, and what is 10.4 minus 13.2? It's negative 2.8. So my answer here would be negative 2.8 equals w. Now you could have always done this using the property. What's the property where you can flip both sides of an equation? You could say that w plus 13.2 equals 10.4. That'd be fine. You can do that. You can flip it around if you want your variable on the left side. So let's look at example number 2. We're going to write an equation. A company has a profit of $750 this week. This profit is $900 more than the profit P last week. Which equation can be used to find P? So I'm going to give you a hint. Here is a massive, huge, major hint that I can give you. Whenever you are trying to find something or you don't know the value of something, what I always did when I was in school is figure out, well, what do I need to find? Well, in this problem, we have to find P, which is the profit. So I always did something called defining the variable. Now, right now, you're probably thinking, well, Mr. Humphreys, I don't need this. This is easy. I can do it right now. You're right. It is easy. But what happens when you can't set up an equation because it's too hard? So I'm going to set P equals profit. But now we have to be careful because if you look in the problem, we talk about profit this week and profit last week. Well, right here it says profit P is last week. So I'm just going to write last for last week. So now, every time I see the profit from last week, I'm going to plug in P. So let's start the problem. I go into my equation, or my sentence, and it says this profit. Well, this profit is talking about this week. What is the profit this week? It's $750. And then is. Is always stands for equal. Then it says 900, so I write 900. More than means add the profit the profit last week. We just said last week was P. So my equation would look like this. $750 equals 900 plus P. So the correct answer would be which one? It would be B. So let's look at our real life application. A line graph showing the scoring while you and your friend played a video game. Write and solve an equation to find your score after level 4. So let's look at this graph. We can look at this and see, okay, it says here's our level and here's our score in points. So you are in green, your friend is in blue. This is where it gets a little tricky. Now if you look here, it says after 4, your friend is at -8. And then 33 points is where then you are. So you could probably do this mathematically, and I'm sure you could just take -8 plus 33, and you'd figure out the answer, which is correct. But we need to solve an equation. So here's how I look at it. What do you know about your friend's score? Your friend's score is 33 points less than yours. Now this is only one way to do it. You can do this different ways. So the first thing I always do is I take this value right here, this variable, and I let whatever letter be your score. That's what we need to find. So I'm going to say S is your score. So anytime you're going to say your score, you're going to plug in S. So in words, I can use this. It says your friend's score is 33 points less than your score. Now let's start plugging stuff in. Your friend's score. What is your friend's score? -8. Is stands for equals. 33 points is 33. Less than is minus. Your score is S. Wait a minute. Something's wrong. What's wrong? I'm hoping that you see one of the biggest mistakes students make. If you are 33 points, if your friend's score is 33 points less than your score, that means it's 33 subtracted from S. So S is your score. 33 less than that would be S minus 33. So your equation is going to be -8 equals S minus 33. We now solve it. We have to get rid of the minus 33. So the opposite of minus 33 is add 33. So we're going to do the inverse operation of minus, which is add. And we're going to do the addition property of equality. So -8 plus 33 is 25. And then the 33's cancel. -33 plus 33 is 0. So S is 25. So what's your score? We always write it in words. Your score is 25 points.